I couldn't believe my eyes. Standing right there in the middle of my ranch, yelling at my dogs like a total maniac, was none other than Barbara Jenkins, the 50-something VP of the HOA from 3 neighborhoods over. She had somehow broken through my locked gate, marched across my pasture in her starched khaki pants and pink button-down shirt, and was now pointing a stick at my 2 Labrador retrievers, Max and Ruby. They were barking protectively, but hadn't moved an inch toward her. "You better control your vicious beasts, or I'll make sure they're put down," she screamed, raising the stick higher, like she was about to strike them. My blood ran cold. I dropped the sack of feed I was carrying and ran toward her, shouting for her to back off. Max and Ruby barked louder, standing their ground, but refusing to lunge, just like they were trained. I trained them myself. They were gentle around people, but guarded our land when strangers trespassed. Barbara spun around when she heard me coming. She didn't look the least bit ashamed. If anything, she stood taller, puffed up like a rooster about to fight. "You're harboring dangerous animals," she barked at me, her face red with fury. "And you're in violation of community safety codes. I have every right to be here." "Lady, you're on private property," I yelled, barely able to keep my anger in check. "You broke in, and those dogs are trained for protection. You're threatening them. You're lucky they're the friendliest dogs on earth." She scoffed and pointed the stick at me now. "I'm the VP of the HOA. I can inspect any property that poses a risk." That's when my neighbor, Joe, who'd heard the commotion, pulled up in his dusty pickup truck. He jumped out and said the words I'll never forget: "She just committed felony trespassing. I already called the sheriff. They're almost here." Barbara's face changed instantly. Her confidence cracked, and she took a step back, but she wasn't done yet. Before any of us could say another word, she threw the stick aside, marched toward my barn, and pulled out her cell phone, like she was about to call for reinforcements. I ran after her, Joe right behind me, yelling at her to leave before she made things worse. Max and Ruby followed us, too, still barking, still confused. And that's when the sound of tires crunching gravel filled the air. 3 sheriff's deputies, lights flashing, pulled up at the front gate. Barbara froze mid-step. One of the deputies stepped out, hand resting lightly on his belt. "Ma'am, you need to stay right where you are," he called out. Barbara whirled around, pointing furiously at me. "He has dangerous dogs. They need to be taken away. I'm enforcing community safety codes." The deputy's face didn't move, calm and stone-like. He said, "Ma'am, you're under arrest for trespassing and animal harassment. Hands where I can see them." Barbara's mouth dropped open in pure shock. And right there, with the sunlight glaring off her pearl earrings, the HOA vice president, the same woman who had once bragged at a town hall meeting that nobody could touch her, was handcuffed and read her rights on my ranch. But just as they were walking her to the patrol car, something crazy happened that changed everything. And that's where things got even more insane. Just as the deputies were walking Barbara toward the patrol car, she twisted suddenly, yanking herself free for half a second. She shrieked at the top of her lungs, "I demand a citizens' committee hearing. I represent the community." The deputies, clearly ready for anything at this point, moved fast. One of them caught her easily, steady but firm, and clipped the second handcuff onto her wrist, double-locking it to be safe. Another deputy turned to me. "Sir, do you have security cameras around the property? We'll need that footage." I nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Cameras on the gate, barn, and pasture." I pointed toward the big oak tree where I had installed one last fall after someone tried to steal my tractor. I never thought it would capture anything like this. The deputy gave a small, approving nod. "Good. It'll make the charges airtight." As they put Barbara into the back of the patrol car, she kept shouting nonsense about safety regulations, dangerous dogs, and the HOA charter. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so ridiculous. But, honestly, it was just sad. I scratched behind Max's ears, calming him down, and Ruby wagged her tail like she hadn't just been threatened with a stick 10 minutes ago. They were good dogs, kind, loyal, full of heart. And it hit me hard right then. Kindness and respect aren't just things you show to people. They're what you owe everything around you: people, animals, land, and even rules you might not agree with. You treat everything with respect, or you risk losing the respect of everyone around you. Joe clapped me on the shoulder, chuckling. Well, bud, reckon you got yourself a real show today. I laughed for the first time that morning. And here I was thinking it was going to be a quiet Saturday. Once Barbara was taken away, the deputies stayed behind to take my statement. I explained everything, from how I was bringing feed to the animals to spotting. She barged right past the gate, threatening Buster and Bella. One of the deputies, Officer Miller, took careful notes and asked a few more questions. He looked to be around my age, mid-30s, wearing his tan uniform and Stetson pulled low. He seemed like a guy who'd seen his share of crazy homeowner association stories. For you, a free like is easy. But for me, it is the greatest support and encouragement. For this video, can you give me 1 like and 1 subscription? Thank you very much. We get these HOA nut jobs sometimes, Miller said when we were done. But threatening dogs? That's a new one, Jake added. And trespassing with a stick like she's Wyatt Earp, Miller chuckled. We'll have to see what the DA wants to do. Between trespass, animal harassment, and resisting arrest, it's not looking good for her. After the deputies left, the ranch felt quiet again. I fixed the broken latch on the gate, making a mental note to upgrade to an even sturdier lock. Buster and Bella were curled up in the shade, tongues lolling out, happy as clams now that everything was calm again. Jake hung around for a while, helping me stack hay bales by the barn. We talked about small things, the upcoming county fair, whether the creek needed dredging after the rains, normal, easy topics that made the earlier chaos seem almost unreal. Life on a ranch teaches you to move on fast. Nature doesn't pause for drama. It was just another reminder that no matter what craziness people might bring into your world, you had a choice: let it poison you, or deal with it and keep moving forward. I chose the second one. Late that evening, after Jake left, I sat out on the front porch with a glass of iced tea. The sunset turned the sky into a masterpiece of golden purple. Buster laid his head on my foot, and Bella snuggled next to the rocking chair. I was thinking about calling it a night when my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. Unknown: you're going to regret getting me arrested. Watch your back. I stared at the message, my heart pounding again. Was it Karen, or someone else from the HOA? Before I could even process it, headlights turned onto my driveway, slow, creeping, unfamiliar headlights. Someone was coming up to my house at night, and they weren't driving like a neighbor, they were creeping like they didn't want to be seen. The truck's headlights grew closer, slow like a crawling animal in the dark. I stood up from the porch chair, my heart pounding hard against my ribs. Buster and Bella lifted their heads too, alert but not barking yet. They could feel something was wrong. I set down my glass of iced tea and quietly stepped back into the house to grab my old shotgun, the one my grandpa left me. I didn't load it, not yet. I just held it, letting whoever it was know that I wasn't playing around. In the country, you sometimes didn't get second chances when someone had bad intentions. The truck stopped about 50 feet from the house, its engine running low and rough. The cab light flicked on. I squinted into the darkness. I didn't recognize the driver. It wasn't any neighbor I knew. It was a man in a dark hoodie, head low, hands gripping the wheel too tightly. His passenger window rolled down a crack, and I heard his voice, slithery and mean. "You messed with the wrong people, cowboy." My stomach tightened into a knot. This wasn't random. Whoever he was connected to Karen somehow, maybe another HOA board member who thought they were above the law. I kept the shotgun pointed down, non-threatening but clear. "You're trespassing," I said, loud enough to carry over the engine noise. "Turn around and leave." He chuckled, an ugly, hollow sound, then revved the engine like he wanted to scare me. Buster and Bella started growling low, standing at my side. Still, I stood my ground. "Last warning," I said. For a second, I thought he might actually floor it and try to run me down. His fingers twitched on the steering wheel, but maybe he realized I wasn't bluffing, that out here the sheriff would be on my side, not his. Finally, he spat on the ground, threw the truck into reverse, and peeled out, spraying gravel behind him. I stood still until his taillights disappeared down the road, then I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Buster nudged my leg. Bella sat and looked up at me, waiting for a cue. I bent down and hugged them both tightly. "You did good," I whispered. When I finally went inside and locked the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. I called the sheriff's office and reported the incident. Deputy Miller promised to send a patrol by a few times through the night. Still, sleep didn't come easy. I sat up most of the night in my living room chair, the shotgun across my lap, staring out the window at the moonlit fields, listening for any sound out of place. It wasn't just about protecting myself, it was about protecting Buster, Bella, and everything I loved about this land, the freedom, the peace, the history I'd built here for 3 generations. By dawn, the sky was a hazy purple, and the birds were starting to sing. I finally allowed myself to relax a little. Nothing else had happened during the night. I opened the back door and let Buster and Bella out to run. They bounded into the morning mist, chasing smells and rabbits. Each other like nothing bad had ever happened. It reminded me again, life keeps moving forward. You can sit frozen in fear, or you can keep going, just like dogs do. I chose to keep going. I made a big pot of coffee, fed Buster and Bella, and went out to start the day's chores. The fence on the west side had been sagging a little, it needed some repairs. I also needed to check on the garden where my tomatoes were just starting to ripen. While I hammered in a new fence post, Jake drove up again. He climbed out carrying a bag from the bakery in town. "Figured you could use a real breakfast after yesterday," he said. I laughed, genuinely grateful. "You have no idea." We sat on the porch eating fresh biscuits with sausage and eggs, sipping coffee while the sun climbed higher. Jake listened as I told him about the strange truck and the threatening message. His face grew serious. "You think Karen's stirring up her crazy friends?" "Maybe," I said, "but why? She already got herself arrested." Jake shook his head. "Some folks don't know when to quit, especially ones who think rules are for everyone but them." He was right. I had learned that the hard way many times before. Some people didn't care about kindness or decency, they cared about power. After breakfast, we patched the fence together. It felt good to work with my hands, to sweat and laugh a little, and remind myself that no matter how much trouble someone brought to my door, they couldn't take away my spirit unless I let them. By early afternoon, the ranch looked peaceful again. Then Jake's phone buzzed. He frowned at the screen, then showed it to me. It was a post from a private HOA Facebook group, the same HOA that Karen was vice president of. Someone had leaked my address along with a message saying, "Dangerous animal owner should not be allowed in the community. Make your voice heard." I stared at the screen, stunned. They weren't just mad, they were mobilizing. Jake muttered a few colorful words under his breath. "We need to get ahead of this," I said, "fast." He nodded. "I'll call the sheriff. You gather your security footage. It's time to bring the truth out." I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my old laptop and loaded the camera footage from the day Karen trespassed. The video was crystal clear. It showed her climbing the gate, poking at Buster and Bella with the stick, shouting threats. It even caught the moment she resisted arrest and screamed about enforcing HOA codes like she was some kind of sheriff herself. It was exactly what I needed. Jake drove into town with me to drop off the footage at the sheriff's office. Officer Miller was waiting when we arrived, serious but supportive. "This will help a lot," Miller said after reviewing the video. "The DA is already interested in making an example out of her." On the way back home, we talked about building stronger gates, getting brighter security lights, even installing an automatic alert system if anyone crossed the property line. "Won't stop crazy," Jake said, smiling grimly, "but it'll sure slow 'em down." When we got back to the ranch, everything looked normal. But that normalcy didn't last long. That evening, just as I was putting up tools for the night, another vehicle rolled down my drive. This time, a shiny black SUV with tinted windows. It stopped near the house. Two men in dark suits stepped out. One of them flashed a badge, but not a sheriff's badge. It was private security, and the man said words that sent a chill down my spine. "We're here to serve you a cease and desist order. The HOA demands you immediately remove all dogs from the property pending safety review." They weren't police, they were HOA-hired private muscle, and they had come straight to my home. I tightened my grip on the screen door handle, not stepping outside yet. Buster and Bella were by my feet, sensing the tension, their tails stiff, their bodies tense. The two men in suits didn't flinch or smile. One of them, the taller guy with gray hair and sunglasses even though the sun was already setting, stepped forward and shoved the envelope into my mailbox like it was a declaration of war. "You've been served," he said in a flat voice. "You have 72 hours to comply or face additional legal action." Then they got back into their SUV without another word and drove off, tires crunching the gravel like thunder. For you, a free like is easy. But for me, it is the greatest support and encouragement. For this video, can you give me 1 like and 1 subscription? Thank you very much. I waited until they were completely gone before opening the door. Buster and Bella went out first, sniffing the air, checking for any lingering scent of danger. I picked up the envelope from the mailbox, my hand shaking slightly with anger. The document inside was printed on thick, fancy paper with a gold HOA seal at the top. It accused me of housing dangerous animals and posing a significant threat to neighborhood safety, and said I had to voluntarily surrender Buster and Bella until a neutral board review. I almost laughed at how ridiculous it was. Neutral board? It was probably just Karen's friends sitting in a circle, high-fiving each other. Jake pulled into my driveway not 5 minutes later, like he had a sixth sense that something was wrong. He must have seen the black SUV leaving. Jake shoved the paper into his hands. He read it, his mouth tightening into a hard line. "This is pure garbage," he said finally. "They don't have any authority over your land. You're not in their HOA. You don't even live in their jurisdiction." "I know," I said, pacing back and forth, "but they're trying to scare me into giving in." Jake looked at the house, then at the horizon. The sun was almost down, painting the ranch in deep orange and purple hues. "They want you to react," he said slowly, "but if you react the wrong way, they'll use it against you." I stopped pacing and stared at him. He was right. They were setting a trap, and I wasn't going to walk into it. I took a deep breath, went back inside, and started making calls. First, to Deputy Miller, who confirmed again that I wasn't under any obligation to obey anything the HOA demanded, especially on private property. Then I called my old friend from high school, Laura Bates. She was a lawyer now, working downtown. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but when I explained everything, she agreed to help immediately. "You're dealing with harassment and intimidation," Laura said over the phone, "and if they step foot on your land again without a proper warrant, you can press criminal charges. Civil court too, if you want." The knot in my chest loosened just a little. At least I wasn't alone. The next day, Laura drove out to the ranch in her dusty Jeep Wrangler, wearing jeans, boots, and a no-nonsense attitude. She brought a big binder full of case law, HOA rules, and property rights documents. We sat at the kitchen table going over everything. "You need a restraining order against Karen," Laura said, "and a cease and desist letter back at them. Hit them hard legally. Let them know you're not some scared farm boy." I smiled. Laura had always been fierce, even back in school when we got into debates during civics class. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said. "I'm not giving up my dogs. I'm not giving up my home." Laura nodded approvingly. "Good. Because bullies only win when good people stay silent." We spent the whole afternoon drafting the documents, preparing the evidence, and getting ready for court if it came to that. Meanwhile, Jake helped install new motion-detecting floodlights around the house and barn. We even set up trail cameras hidden along the driveway, just in case someone tried sneaking in. By the time evening rolled around again, the ranch was lit up like a small fortress but still felt like home. My home. The dogs seemed to feel safer too. Bella ran circles around the porch, barking happily, while Buster lay in the grass, chewing a stick like he didn't have a care in the world. That night, for the first time in days, I slept soundly until a banging noise woke me up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I jolted upright, heart racing. The banging came again, not knocking, not someone asking for help. It was someone hitting something hard. I grabbed my shotgun and ran to the front window. Out near the barn, silhouetted by the floodlights, I saw 3 figures. They wore dark clothes and hoods pulled low over their faces. One of them was swinging a crowbar at my barn door. Another one was spray painting something on the side of my feed shed. Buster and Bella were already barking like crazy, their deep barks shaking the walls. I grabbed my phone and called the sheriff's office with shaking fingers. "Emergency," I said, "trespassers, vandalism, armed." The dispatcher was calm and fast. "Units en route. Stay inside. Officers will be there within minutes." But I couldn't just sit there. I had to protect my land. I slipped out the back door with Buster and Bella beside me, moving quietly through the shadows. I circled around the barn, staying out of the floodlights. When I got close enough, I saw what the vandals were spraying: dog killers. The rage that boiled inside me was almost too much to control. They weren't just trying to scare me anymore, they wanted to destroy everything I stood for. One of the men pulled out a lighter and a bottle of something that looked like gasoline. They were about to set my barn, my grandfather's barn, the one he built with his bare hands, on fire. I stepped out of the shadows and chambered around into the shotgun with a loud, unmistakable click-clack. The 3 men froze. "You've got 5 seconds to drop it and lay down," I said, my voice as cold as iron. Buster and Bella growled low and deep, standing beside me like living statues of loyalty. The men hesitated, then from down the driveway, flashing lights appeared, multiple patrol cars roaring in, their sirens slicing through the night. The men panicked and tried to run, but it was too late. Deputies poured out of the vehicles, shouting commands, weapons drawn. The would-be arsonists were tackled to the ground, handcuffed, and hauled to their feet. Deputy Miller rushed over to me. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, adrenaline still surging. They were about to torch my barn. Miller's face darkened. "Not anymore, they're not. We're booking them for attempted arson, vandalism, trespassing, and conspiracy to commit a felony." One of the hooded men was screaming now, protesting his innocence, claiming it was just a prank, but nobody believed him. As the deputies dragged them away, I caught a glimpse of something sticking out of one of the men's pockets, a keychain with the HOA's gold emblem on it. Karen's HOA. They were connected, and suddenly it wasn't just Karen causing trouble anymore. It was bigger than that, much bigger. Deputy Miller stood there for a long moment, staring at the gold HOA emblem on the keychain like it was a smoking gun. He pocketed it carefully in an evidence bag, then looked back at me, his voice low. "We're going to need a full investigation. This isn't just trespassing anymore, it's organized harassment." I nodded, my throat tight. "Whatever you need. I'm not backing down." Miller gave me a rare half-smile. "Good. That's exactly the attitude you need to have." As the patrol cars pulled away, hauling the 3 vandals off to jail, I stood in the yard with Jake and Laura, who had both rushed over as soon as I called them. Jake wore a grim expression, arms crossed, boots planted firm like he was ready for war. Laura was already dialing numbers on her phone, speaking sharply into the receiver about evidence preservation and witness statements. Buster and Bella circled us, still tense but settling down now that the immediate threat was over. I looked over at the barn, lit up like a beacon under the floodlights. The side where they had spray-painted dog killers would need scrubbing and repainting, but at least it was still standing. My grandpa's barn, the heart of this ranch, was safe for now. But it was clear Karen and her cronies weren't going to stop until they either ruined me or pushed me out, and that just wasn't going to happen. By the time the sun was rising, The ranch looked peaceful again, but inside, a storm was building. Laura stayed for breakfast, hammering out a plan at the kitchen table while we ate leftover biscuits and reheated coffee. She outlined the steps we needed to take: file for a restraining order against Karen Matthews personally, file criminal complaints for harassment, trespassing, conspiracy, and attempted arson, send a cease and desist letter to the HOA's board, naming them directly and warning of pending civil action if they didn't back off immediately, prepare a civil lawsuit against the HOA for damages and against individual board members if necessary. She even suggested going public, taking the whole story to the local news stations. HOA abuse was a hot topic these days. People loved stories about the little guy standing up to bullies. At first, I hesitated. I hated drama. I wasn't the kind of guy who wanted my name splashed across TV screens and newspaper headlines. But Jake said something that stuck with me: if you don't tell your side, they'll tell it for you, and they'll lie. He was right. I had to fight smart, not just hard. After breakfast, Laura left to file the legal papers, and Jake and I went to work cleaning up the barn. We scrubbed off the spray paint as best we could, but some of it had soaked into the old wood. We'd have to repaint eventually. Still, it felt good to take action, even small actions. Working with my hands helped settle my mind. It reminded me of what really mattered: the land, the animals, the history, the life I had built here. The attacks, the threats, they were noise. They weren't bigger than my roots. That afternoon, I drove into town to meet with the sheriff formally and give my full statement again. Deputy Miller assured me that charges were already being filed and that the DA was looking into additional penalties because it was clear the attacks were coordinated. But as I was leaving the sheriff's office, something strange happened. I saw Karen. She was sitting in the back of a black sedan across the street, sunglasses on her face, half hidden behind the door frame, and she was watching me. Our eyes locked for just a second. I expected her to look furious, humiliated, maybe even scared, but instead, she smiled, a slow, cold, knowing smile. It sent a shiver down my spine. Karen wasn't afraid of getting caught, she had something else planned. I got into my truck quickly and drove back to the ranch, every nerve on edge. Jake was already there, unloading some supplies from the hardware store. He noticed the look on my face immediately. "What happened?" "Susan," I said shortly. "She's not scared. She's planning something." Jake spat on the ground. "Let her try. She's losing." But I wasn't so sure. Later that night, after checking all the locks and security systems twice, I sat on the porch again, shotgun within reach, Buster and Bella lying at my feet. I couldn't shake the image of that smile. What was she planning? Just after midnight, I found out. The roar of engines shattered the quiet night. I jumped up, heart hammering. Down the driveway, 4 black SUVs rolled in, their headlights off. They barreled past the front gate, smashing it open like it was made of. Men in dark clothes jumped out, not police, not deputies, private security, armed. One of them held a clipboard, another carried zip ties, and they were headed straight for my door. Jake came running from the barn, carrying his hunting rifle. He must have seen the convoy from his trailer behind the barn. I raised my shotgun high. "Stop right there!" I shouted. "This is private property. You have no legal authority here." One of the men, a big guy with a buzz cut, stepped forward, holding up a fake-looking document. "Under emergency HOA safety orders, we are authorized to remove all dangerous animals and secure the property pending review." Jake snorted. "You're trespassing, boys. Big mistake." The men didn't listen, they advanced. Jake chambered around, so did I. Buster and Bella barked so loudly the whole ranch seemed to shake. Then, behind us, we heard the sweetest sound in the world, sheriff sirens. Deputy Miller's voice boomed over the loudspeaker, "This is law enforcement. Drop your weapons, hands in the air." The fake security froze. Jake and I stood our ground, shotguns pointed low but ready. Deputy cars screamed down the driveway, surrounding the SUVs. Men in uniform poured out, real badges flashing under the floodlights. The fake security didn't even try to run. One by one, they were cuffed and shoved against their own vehicles. Deputy Miller stormed up to me. "For you, a free like is easy. But for me, it is the greatest support and encouragement. For this video, can you give me 1 like and 1 subscription? Thank you very much." "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, breathing hard. They said they were authorized by the HOA. Miller's jaw clenched. "Not anymore, they're not." He turned to his deputies. "Book them for criminal trespass, unlawful detainment, impersonating law enforcement, and conspiracy to commit home invasion." I watched, stunned, as the men were dragged away. Then Carter turned back to me. "You're going to want to come into town tomorrow. We've got warrants going out." "For what?" I asked. Carter smiled grimly. "For Susan Matthews and for the HOA president too." The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, heart pounding with a strange mix of dread and hope. It was the day everything might finally come to a head. Buster and Bella stayed close as I moved around the kitchen, making coffee. I barely tasted it, checking and rechecking the locks even though nothing had happened overnight. I didn't need caffeine, adrenaline was already burning through my veins. Jake met me by the front gate, wearing his oldest jeans and a ball cap pulled low over his eyes. He clapped me on the back without saying a word. He didn't have to, his steady presence said it all. We drove into town together, my old truck rumbling along the cracked country road. The morning was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I kept replaying every moment from the past week, Susan trespassing, threatening my dogs, sending thugs to my ranch in the middle of the night. And I kept asking the same question, why? Was it really just about control, about power, or was there something bigger I hadn't seen yet? Deputy Miller was waiting for us when we arrived at the sheriff's office. His uniform was crisp, his hat pulled low, but his eyes were sharp and alert. He wasted no time. "We've issued formal arrest warrants for Susan Matthews and Mark Phillips, the president of the HOA. Jake let out a low whistle. "Didn't see that one coming." Miller nodded. "Turns out Mark Phillips has been operating outside the HOA's legal limits for years, extortion, illegal security contracts, fake safety inspections, the works. And Susan's been helping him." He handed me a stack of papers, copies of the arrest warrants, the civil charges, and the protection orders that now legally prevented Susan or any HOA member from setting foot near my ranch. "This doesn't just protect you," Carter said. "It blows their whole operation wide open." I flipped through the papers, feeling a strange tightness in my chest, relief, maybe, or the heavy weight of justice finally rolling into place. But Carter wasn't finished. He pulled out a sealed manila folder and slid it across the desk toward me. "You're going to want to see this," he said. I opened it slowly. Inside were dozens of printed emails, messages between Susan, Mark, and several other board members. They talked openly about targeting homeowners they didn't like. They even discussed using fake reports to drive people out so they could take over their properties cheaply. And there, in bold black ink, was my name, target, your character's name. Rural holdout. Potential for future subdivision. Subdivision. It hit me like a punch to the gut. They didn't just want me gone because of my dogs, they wanted my land, my 60-acre ranch sitting right on the edge of town, perfect for developers hungry to build cookie-cutter houses and strip malls. I wasn't just a nuisance to them, I was standing in the way of millions of dollars. Jake leaned over my shoulder, reading the documents with a growing scowl. "Those dirty rats." Carter folded his arms. "They saw you as an obstacle, someone they could bully off the land. That's why they escalated so fast when you refused to bow." I stared at the papers, my fists clenching. It wasn't personal, it was greed. Cold, heartless greed. And they had almost gotten away with it. Almost. Laura arrived at the sheriff's office a few minutes later, her heels clicking sharply on the tile floor. She took one look at the folder, and her face went tight with fury. "They're done," she said fiercely. "We're filing for damages so big they'll be lucky if they can afford a garden shed when this is over." For the rest of the morning, We worked side by side with the deputies, signing affidavits, submitting evidence, building a wall of legal force around the ranch so thick that not even the most determined HOA bully could break through it. It was exhausting, but it was also empowering. For once, the good guys weren't just surviving, we were winning. When we finally left the sheriff's office around noon, I felt lighter than I had in days. Jake and I grabbed lunch at the diner, big, greasy burgers and sweet tea that tasted better than any meal I could remember. Laura joined us, laughing about how she couldn't wait to see Susan's face when the handcuffs clicked shut. "I might even come just to watch," she said, grinning. For a little while, it almost felt normal again, like life was finally sliding back into place. But deep down, I knew better. People like Susan didn't go down easy. And sure enough, just as I was paying the check, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Unknown, this isn't over. You'll wish you left on your own terms." I stared at the message, my appetite evaporating. Jake leaned over to read it, his jaw tightening. Laura took the phone out of my hand, typing quickly. "Send it to Carter. He'll trace it." Could be Susan, could be one of her goons. She was calm, focused, but I wasn't. Something about the message felt different this time, less like a threat, more like a warning. When we got back to the ranch, everything looked normal to normal. The broken gate from the night before had been temporarily fixed. The field stretched out under the blazing afternoon sun. The barn stood tall and proud. Buster and Bella bounded up to greet us, tails wagging, tongues lolling happily. But my skin itched with unease. Jake noticed it too. He kept glancing around, hand never straying far from the old revolver he kept holstered at his hip. I checked the trail cameras, nothing new. Checked the motion sensors, all green. Checked the security lights, working fine. And still, the feeling wouldn't go away. At sunset, Jake and Laura said their goodbyes, promising to be back first thing in the morning for the court filings. I stood on the porch with Buster and Bella, watching their trucks disappear down the drive. The ranch was quiet, too quiet. The first shot cracked through the air so fast I barely had time to react. It hit the mailbox, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. Buster and Bella barked wildly, running for cover. Another shot rang out, hitting the side of the barn. I dropped flat onto the porch, heart hammering. From the far tree line, I saw them, two figures crouched low behind the fence, rifles raised, snipers on my land. They were shooting at my house, at me. The shots kept coming, crack, crack, crack. I crawled low across the porch, heart pounding like a drum inside my chest. Splinters from the railing exploded around me as another bullet slammed into the wood just inches from my head. Buster and Bella huddled inside the open doorway, whining but staying low like they were trained. I needed cover fast. Rolling onto my stomach, I belly crawled across the porch and ducked into the house, slamming the door behind me. I dropped to my knees, grabbed my phone, and with shaking fingers called 911. Shots fired. I gasped. At my ranch. 2 shooters, armed rifles, firing at my house. "I need deputies here now." The dispatcher's voice stayed calm even as I panicked. "Stay low, sir. Units are on the way. Stay on the line." I kept the phone tucked to my ear while crawling toward the hallway, keeping my body low and moving toward the back of the house where there were fewer windows. Another bullet shattered the front window. Glass rained down into the living room like glittering hail. I fought the instinct to panic. I had to stay smart. Buster and Bella pressed against my legs, tails tucked, trusting me to protect them. I made it to the mudroom where my old hunting rifle was stored. I grabbed it and checked the rounds, full magazine. I didn't plan to fire unless absolutely necessary, but I wasn't going to sit here and be a sitting duck either. The seconds felt like hours. I heard the shooters yelling to each other, low, angry voices, but couldn't make out what they were saying. Then, the most beautiful sound in the world, sirens. Lots of them, coming fast. I peeked out a small side window and saw a convoy of sheriff's cruisers flying down my driveway, lights blazing. Deputy Miller's SUV led the charge. The shooters must have heard it too because suddenly the gunfire stopped. I heard scuffling movement. They were running. The deputies pulled up in a cloud of dust and shouting, "Drop your weapons. Hands in the air now." I saw the two shooters try to sprint across the pasture toward the woods. Deputies gave chase. Buster barked once sharply, like he understood the tide had turned. I stayed down, heart thumping in my ears. Minutes later, there was shouting, then silence, then the satisfying squawk of radios confirming 2 suspects in custody. Deputy Miller came to my door, motioning for me to stay put while his team swept the house and yard for any more threats. Once he gave the all-clear, I stepped outside, the adrenaline still burning hot through my veins. "Are you all right?" he asked, scanning me quickly. I nodded, though my hands were still shaking. "I'm fine. Buster and Bella are fine." He clapped my shoulder firmly. "You're lucky. Those men were hired guns." "Hired?" I asked, stunned. Carter nodded grimly. "Private security contractors. Expelled military. Someone paid them cash to intimidate you, or worse. I didn't have to guess who, Susan Matthews, and probably Mark Phillips too." Carter confirmed my thoughts with a short nod. "We found evidence linking Susan to the payment, texts, cash receipts. She's going down for conspiracy to commit assault with a deadly weapon, among other charges." The relief I felt was so strong it nearly knocked me over. It was over. It was finally over. The ranch was scarred, the front porch riddled with bullet holes, the mailbox blown apart, the barn bearing the fresh pockmarks of gunfire, but we had survived. I had survived. And Susan? She was about to face justice in a way she couldn't scheme or bully her way out of. The next few days passed in a blur. The sheriff's office pressed charges against Susan Matthews, Mark Phillips, and every HOA board member connected to the attacks. The news spread like wildfire across town, HOA leaders arrested in ranch attack. And suddenly, everyone knew the truth. Neighbors who had once looked down on my ranch stopped by to offer apologies, food, even offers to help rebuild. For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of loneliness lift from my shoulders. I wasn't alone anymore. Laura worked fast, filing the civil lawsuits. We sued the HOA as an organization, we sued Susan personally, we sued Mark. And because of the overwhelming evidence, the vandalism, the trespassing, the threats, the attempted arson, the assassination attempt, the judges moved quickly. The court ruled in our favor. Susan and the HOA were ordered to pay for all damages to my ranch, and then some. They lost their positions, they lost their reputations, they lost their money. The HOA itself was dissolved permanently by court order, deemed a criminal organization. By the time the dust settled, I had not only kept my ranch, I had expanded it. Some of the neighboring lots owned by Susan's crooked friends went up for auction to cover their legal debts. I bought 2 more acres next to my pasture. Buster and Bella ran like kings across the new fields, tongues lolling happily, as free as they were meant to be. One afternoon, a few weeks later, Jake and I stood at the edge of a new property, watching the sunset paint the sky in every color imaginable. "You did good," Jake said simply. I smiled, feeling the truth of it settle deep inside me. "I didn't do it alone." He chuckled. "Yeah, well, you still had the guts to stand when most folks would have run." I knelt down and scratched Buster and Bella behind their ears. They looked up at me with pure love, no fear, no anger, no memories of gunshots or violence. Dogs know how to live in the moment. They forgive. They move forward. Maybe it was time I learned from them. Life on a ranch isn't easy. It's full of storms, both in the sky and in the hearts of people. But if you stay true to yourself, protect what matters, and never let fear decide your future, you can outlast any storm, even the ones you never saw coming. As the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long golden shadows across the fields, I stood up straight, feeling the cool breeze sweep across the land I fought so hard to keep home. It was still mine. And no one, no HOA, no bully, no greedy developer, would ever take it from me again. Not now. Not ever.